Ibu Hamsatul Alamin, please. I'm invite for
Oh,
share the presentations.
yeah.
Thank you. And your time is
Yeah.
around 20 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is it to you? It's good afternoon, but here in Nigeria, it's good morning, sisters. I have to switch off my camera to maybe save the width band. So thank you very much for inviting me to in fact be part of your occasion. First, let me start by highlighting challenges that are impeding the implementation of WPS issues generally. Let me start by revisiting the four pillars of the WPS, that of participation, which calls for involvement of women; protection, that is about safeguarding; prevention is about enhancing and interventions that accelerate human rights, and then legislation that ensure gender equality; and then relief and recovery, that is a sector that guarantees, in fact, gender sensitive planning in every aspect after violent conflicts and then conflict issues. So the major challenges that in fact impede the implementation is of this across the globe generally, I can say number one is armed conflict, the increasing prevalence of armed conflict, where we witness mass displacement and abduction of women and girls, sexual slavery, and all the domestic violence and all. In fact, this is so much the focus on resolving conflict has even taken away the attention of the international community, who provide us support and funding on WHPS issues. Hence, the issue of women, peace, and security is relegated to the background. People are busy, in fact, countering violent extremism with bombs, guns, and bullets, and then attending to humanitarian issues. And then secondly, I think the way I see it, climate change. Climate change, I can say, is a multiplier threat to the implementation of WPS agenda, where in fact this elevates poverty, and then the issue of climate, particularly in our context, and then in many places across the globe, in especially conflict situation, is a big challenge. And then faced with these violent conflicts all over, and then the climate change, I think all national mechanisms for protection, for gender equality, and women empowerment seem to give way to impact the spaces for protection and others now seem to be, I can say, shrinking. Thus, attention is more focused on other issues. In fact, national governments are preoccupied with managing conflicts and then fighting extremism and others rather than women, peace, and security issues. So, faced with these challenges globally, in Nigeria, particularly in the context where I am operating, well, we women have to impact. My people have a saying which says, condition makes the crayfish bend. Yes. So because of these several conditions, yes, once there is life, there must be hope. So we women have taken up the challenge, particularly to come up in the context of the Boko Haram crisis in northern Nigeria, which is now its 16 years. Yes, people like us and then fellow women, we have organized ourselves under the Women, Peace, and Security Challenges agenda to impact, first of all, challenge the narrative of violent extremism from Boko Haram to Boko Halal, where we, in fact, worked with Islamic scholars, produce manual to teach peace clubs in Islamic schools, go to radio stations, open safe spaces so that local women, Islamic scholars can go and speak to enlighten people and others. And then so that we were able to impact, completely change the perception that secular education is completely haram to not only halal, but it is compatible in consonance with the Islamic principles. So in the still context of the Boko Haram insurgency, while the government now encourages the extremists to lay down their arms and surrender, so far I can see in my community over 200,000 men and women have surrendered. Of these fighters have surrendered. So I, as a woman peace builder, identified a gap in what the government has started, the Borno model of demobilization, de-radicalization, and then disarmament. Because the women and girls and then children are put in victims box. While we came to discover that because of the long-standing relationship that we have built with them, we now understood that really these women and girls are equally dangerous, even if not even more dangerous than the men themselves. So therefore, we introduce what we call community-based approach. Yes, community-based approach in every intervention is key in view of the challenges I mentioned before. Hence, we now move in to in fact engage these women first of all, the women without husbands for fear of their husbands seeing us as interfering in their affairs, so that we de-radicalize them, we remove the radical ideologies and radical tendencies inside them, and we have now transformed them to be responsible individuals, I can say even peacemakers. So we started now a database of how many women, particularly who are radicalized. And within the period of 4 months, we have registered over 3,900 women and then 460 boys who are radicalized, who are equally dangerous. And out of this, because we are a small organization, we started direct intervention with 110 of them. And out of that 100, we now, in fact, give them life and livelihood skills after de-radicalizing them and demystifying the radical tendencies in their heads, minds, and psyche. Then these people go into trauma. So therefore, we heal them of the trauma and the psychological distresses. We teach them life and livelihood skills, and then support them with startup kits, and then cash support, and then network them into the community so that the real integration stage here. As these women now have repented and others, so they now started making an overwhelming demand on us to make similar intervention on their men. In fact, this has now broadened our intervention. In fact, I am happy to say that a greater partnership has now been created where, in fact, the government of Borno State, where I live now, for the first time, the governor personally called and said he is going to support the work my foundation is doing so that we continue, because it is adding value to what the government is doing. And then our community members too, we do not leave them like that. Yeah, since it is all about integration, and then about people, the general communities are so much infected that everybody is frustrated and angry, and then with this Boko Haram issue. So therefore, we now have to make special intervention in the communities, where in our expanded partnership, we created what we call the community advocates and then the community dialogue forum, where we go into these communities, enlighten them, sensitize them, and then show them how, in fact, how these women who are really, and then young men who we see as violent extremism, what are the situations that made them to be so. In fact, contrary to what the globally accepted push and pull factor of violent extremism, we have now come to understand that it is not about lack of resources or lack of education. Rather, it is a gap in their human existence, that knowledge of that is a gap in the knowledge of their religion. It is the love of their religion and then the love of God that make these young men and women to sacrifice their lives and blood so that they said they are going to change the world in the service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this religion is being manipulated, and then it is misinterpreted, and then this now went into their psyche because nobody is offering them the proper interpretation and proper guidance. That's why, in fact, our young men and women became victims. So with our intervention, we have now come to learn that really violent extremism in our context can be changed through the interventions of women, which is community driven, where we mobilize all actors. And then in this mobilization, we do not leave anybody. in the parts from the community, we go down to the government. As I said, my government has started supporting us. And then community members also mobilize resources, in fact, and then support my foundation to continue doing this kind of peace building work. While even the military itself, the Nigerian military, that we used to accuse of violating women's rights and human rights and others. In fact, there is so value in what we are doing, because during this incessant increase of suicide bombings all over and others, we now understood from the women that we work with that these women are undertaking revenge mission against the Nigerian military, because they feel that there are men who want to come and surrender while being killed by the hybrid forces who assist the military, and then their properties are stolen. Hence, in the absence, on the situation where their husbands and sons were killed, these women now undertook to take revenge on not only the military but the entire society, so that they commit suicide bombings, and then where they kill people in mass and others. So we started networking this kind of women. We now took them to brief the military on what their own perspective of the situation, which in fact added a lot of value, and then opened the horizon of the military, really, that there are some measures that need to be taken in the fight against terrorism. So there are in fact so many community-driven interventions that we do. In fact, that shows you the importance of local leadership. Leadership not in the actual sense of the word, but anybody who in fact aspires or who comes out to make intervention that impacts on the lives of people, that brings about positive change, to me is a leader. And then in this direction, women under the women peace and security agenda, yes, we have brought in ourselves. Yes, nobody calls us, nobody encouraged us even to come and do it, but out of our own impact, instinct, and then thought, felt that yes, we have a value to add. Women have something that is to be offered to this society. So we are come out to undertake these interventions, and then which is making a difference in the life of our communities. So internationally, my colleagues in the women peace and security arena will say, yes, their rights have been impeached. They have been stigmatized somehow, or even excluded, or even not regarded, or in fact are pushed to the background. I tell them honestly, no. As women, in fact, yes, we need to equip ourselves with knowledge, with skills, and then be conversant with the situation or events or issues that are happening around us, so that we can come up with appropriate interventions, knowledge-based. And in this context, knowledge of the religion is very important. Is very important, and even international relations, so that as women we can talk. When we talk, it is knowledge based. When we make interventions, it is unique, and then based on practically what people can see, assess, and then feel the impacts. So in this these challenges, to face these challenges and then make these interventions, Element Foundation doesn't do it alone, because no one can do it alone. Peace building, honestly, is everybody's business. Hence, we now started to forge the partnership. Forging the partnership, first of all, I started bringing civil society actors together into a network of civil society organization for peace, and then as voice of the voiceless. And then for the post-conflict now, I brought out this civil society organization to make them the Northeast Transitional Justice Network, so that it's not me alone. No, other civil society actors, we build their capacity, we give them the skills, and then together we undertake joint advocacies, and then also do the interventions collectively. And then, in addition to the civil society actors, we also forge partnerships with the media. I created what we call a media forum on transitional justice in the northeastern Nigeria, where about 45 media organizations were members. To these media members, in fact, in our traditional context, yes, these issues of training, and retraining and then bringing up proactively addressing issues is not there. It's all about reporting, interviewing, and others. So we now, in fact, have to proactively engage consultants to train this media organization. Do you undertake evidence-based advocacy, so that you have to include, in addition to your reporting, you have to include even evidence-based advocacies, because we have now networked you with the victims, survivors, and all of what have you of the conflict, and then the impacted communities, so that as you report and seek for the report, to write your reports, you have to include advocacy. So we train them in media advocacy, in conflict sensitivity, and others, to proactively, in fact, do their works as journalists, and then to all our joint advocacies, we undertake them collectively. And then what brought you today here in Indonesia under the She Builds Peace Campaign Forum? Yes, in Nigeria, what I did is I brought up, the Boko Haram has, in fact, polarized the Christians and Muslim world in Nigeria. Yes, because of the way where the Christians see the whole Boko Haram as an agenda of the Muslim against the Christians, while we Muslims also have our own narrative about it. So therefore, in this case, under my She Builds Peace intervention, I now on faith-based organization, really women faith-based organizations, as Muslim women, as Christian, the umbrella bodies. Let's come together. We are women peacemakers, of course, making our interventions individually. But now we are faced with a problem, which in fact we are, I can say, being misinformed or manipulated by some forces, so that we now begin to see each other as enemies, while the essence of our creation is not this. So we go back to the genesis of creation of mankind itself in the Quran, where we tell them as Muslims, this is what God has said in the Quran, where he created man from a single soul. From that single soul, he created his mate. And then from the two of them, he created several men and women in different colors and races, so that we can understand each other, not to fight each other. And then go back and then dig into the Genesis from the book of Abraham down to the Quran of Muhammad, and then to show them practically that, yes, there is no need for us to fight in this world, because it is only when we die and that God will judge us and then put us in either heaven or hell. So while in this world, let's enjoy ourselves, live peacefully, tolerate each other, so that, yes, these women became very happy. And then because we are teaching them something new, skills in advocacy, skills in conflict analysis. Yes, my time is up. Hello.
We have time. Yes, please
Yeah.
continue.
So, yes, so we created different forums, forged partnerships and alliances with government, with communities, with advocates, including the violent extremists themselves and security agencies, all in a bid to support the women peace and security agenda, and show really the community that as women we have a value to add, and then the solutions to the problems are all in our hands, given the opportunity, or if not even without being given the opportunity, we feel it is a moral right and responsibility on us to take it up and then implement what we can. Thank you very much. Hi. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ibu Ms. Hamsatu Alamin, for the fruitful of the sharing related about the woman and community driven impact and local leadership in case study Muslim in Nigeria. So now we have Ibu Yuni to share the historical systemic barriers to the full implementation of Resolution 1325. Welcome, Ibu. Time is 20 minutes also.
Test. Okay. Can you hear clearly my voice? Please give me a response from the online friends.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke, selamat siang. First of all, thank you very much for University of Jember and also Aman Indonesia who developed very important collaboration to bring the issue of WPS as our common concern, common agenda, and the campus is also very important role to taking part of to maintain sustain a peace and also preventing conflict in the context of Indonesia and also at the region and also at the global context because we cannot this is inseparable the dynamic in the global context and also national and also at local context. Okay, so this is a short, not short. I mean that my presentation is just like giving several points. The first is about, please next. Okay, the genesis behind UNSR 1325. Next, please. Next, okay. I hope you can read my presentation because I try to use inclusive presentation means that for our friend who has disability of like hearing, they also can access by reading this presentation because so through the narrative presentation they can follow the process. And also the background is white. This is also gender and women friendly color, especially people who are in the period, especially menstruation. So, okay, let's go back to WPS. Elizabeth Rain role is very important. If you read the document, you will find rarely mention about her name. But as a matter of fact, she is very important because at the time she became the special rapporteur and also mission coordinator at the UN under Kofi Annan term. Based on her finding in Bosnia, Herzegovina, Yugoslavia, she brought her findings to UNSR and also to UN in general to give serious attention to the case of sexual violence happening in the conflict setting. Especially when she came to Indonesia, invited by the ambassador of Finlandia, because she was the first women minister of the minister of defense, the first woman who become defense minister in the region. I mean that in Finland, Finland or one of the Scandinavian countries. And the process of UNSR, it is really based on the participatory process. She and also UNSR inviting civil society from different contexts of conflict, especially from women's movement, from civil society to give testimony about what happening in the various conflicts. And finally, in 2000, we have UNSR. This is after half of century after Second World War. That a lot of victims, but after half of century, the women's as a victim, as important actors recognized in the UNSR. And in Indonesian context, from Komnas Perempuan perspective, in 2010 we had collaboration with the women's organization from Holland, and also we embrace Ministry of Women's Empowerment, Ibu Linda Gumelar at that time, to discuss at the to discuss about UNSR. This is relatively very new at that time, but this is also very important when the central government still in the position of, let's say, what do you call it, disagree with the existence of UNSR. I will explain later. But women start to think that this is very important. I think this is a great initiative. And at that time, we also discussed with several civil society and women's movement in Indonesia to know deeper about the UNSR 1325. Okay, so I tried to open what is the current position of Indonesia in 2024. We are at the moment in the rank of 82nd out of 177 countries. This is based on George Town Institute of WPS. And the score, our score is comparable with Chinese, Bhutan, and the last score is Afghanistan. So we are in the middle in the context of the rank of our security and peace level. Next. So I would explain briefly, because it's already mentioned several times, about the elan vital or essential aspect of WPS. When we talk about peace, this is inseparable or this is deeply related to the justice issues, educational rights, financial justice, perception about violence and safety, and also about regulation. So nothing peace without civil and political rights, and also economic rights, because the root of the conflict and security start from this condition. And UNSR is looking at the impact of conflict on women and how to listen women's need at all stages of the during conflict, repatriation, resettlement, rehabilitation, reintegration, and post-conflict reconstruction. So WPS tried to not only impact of conflict, but also recognizing the agency of women as a peace maker, as a broad justice, considering that peace is not only in public, but also at the domestic level, and also how the security sectors not only dominated by male, but also women has having capacity to be to make a peace in many levels, especially at the security sector, security institution, peacekeepers, and also peace negotiation and others. Next. Structural challenges of WPS in Indonesia. So as I mentioned before, at the beginning, the Indonesian government still objected to accept UNSR 1325 because they perceived that UNSR 1325 as a product of undemocratic UN Security Council resolution. Because Security Council still, using veto rights. So veto is comparable with the undemocratic, non-participatory, and giving privilege to 5 countries to have a veto. If you read the history of veto, is also very important. Why? Veto is still exists up to now, even at the moment become like there are several dynamic and discussion. But at the beginning of the World War II, we almost have had no universal declaration of human rights if those 5 countries not that the member of countries disagree with the veto for these 5 countries. So veto become, what do you call it, transactional, transactional and also concession. If this world will have declaration of human right, so the veto must be there. So those 5 countries should have special or privilege to have veto. So this is also very interesting. In the middle of the dynamic in the UN itself, that participatory process is very important. For instance, how the UPR, Universal Periodic Review, is a mechanism to give same authority for all those countries to review other countries as a peer relation. So this is also another reformation at the United Nations. But the reformation in the UN Security Council is still, let's say, the most less progressive compared to others, to other mechanism in the UN. And the other barriers, other challenges is WPS is simplified to address of social conflict than armed conflict. Ibu Ruby very intensive to discuss and with the circle how to verify UNSR 1325 to the national law, but the national law on conflict simplified to touch the issue of social conflict than armed conflict. This is very difficult. How the domination, the militarism in Indonesia is still very strong, and security issues have been perceived as male sphere than related to women's issues because of the masculinity of security of defense and security connotated as issues of weapon, issue of that this is military zone and etc. And also we have long culture of impunity in the past conflict and human rights violation because of the problem of the rule of evidence. And we have victims, but we have no perpetrators. Never, proved that there was a perpetrator. Even in 65 tragedy, Papua, Timor-Leste, May 95, 80, 98 tuh 80, 98, sorry, 98, 85. Okay, so we have victims, but we have no perpetrator because the mechanism of justice is still depending on the rule of evidence. For instance, for the past human rights violation, when Komnas Perempuan brought to the prominent military to discuss about this, they said, okay, we will punish if you can prove who are the perpetrator. Whether there is a sperma, whether you have to prove who are the names, etc., etc. So it's very difficult using past human rights violation based on the legal rule of evidence. Next. Conflict in Indonesia and why it is the WPS is very important. Based on the Komnas Perempuan, and I think also the findings of Aman and also other researchers, that in many contexts of conflict in Indonesia, SGBV, sexual gender-based violence always happen. And sexual violence as the tool or target of terror, as a punishment, people thinking that rape and sexual violence matter of penetrating penis to the vagina, sometimes just for the sexual desire, but as from the field that we found, this is sometimes part of the punishment to conquest, that the target group is should be defeated by sexual violence, and the purification of offspring, that you are not pure anymore because we implant our generation to the community of the enemy. So it is will be prolonged the, what do you call it, the revenge, and also humiliating of men of the target group unable to protect their women because the review of the point of view of the masculine standpoint. Form of GBV, as you know, rape, pregnancy, genital mutilation, sexual harassment, sexual torture, sexist and misogynic threats, and etc. Later on, I will explain. This finding is very important as a basic substance for the sexual violence bill. Next. The urgency of women's involvement in the WPS, especially also the role of the youth, role of women's leadership in preventing conflict or global context. We witnessing, I remember when I was in the US, around 9 or 11 women of the parliament member of America, they were like walk out because they disagree with the policy of the US to attack Iraq at that time. So we can imagine if the women sitting at the parliament and they have perspective of peace, they will refuse the war. And also women's movement, regardless of their primordial identity, they also against the occupation of Palestine, for instance. So this is the power of the women, that peace is something very important in the life of the women and also the life of a human being.
Apologize, 5 minutes left.
Okay. Moment. 5 minutes. Okay, will be enough. Okay. Next, the impact of conflict on women. That, of course, forced eviction. It is always happen in the name of security. If you hear about the issues of Gavatar, how Gavatar expelled and victims of eviction in Kalimantan, at the beginning start with the politicization of gender issues, that the women of Gavatar living together with their men, taking bath together, etc., etc., and also politicizing the sexual issues, and this has become legitimacy for local people to attack them, and the security apparatus brought them. This is another form of eviction because those Gavatar group expelled from Kalimantan to the original or to the origin places. In the name of the more dangerous situation. But as a matter of fact, after they leaving those area, not long from that eviction, the land already occupied by the corporate, especially foreign corporate. So this is another eviction, how the land grabbing, the issue of security, religious issues mixed together as another form of conflict. And also being disabled or impairment, loss of land, source of livelihood, including what happening in Poso, Palu, and also in some other areas, and also multi-generational trauma and circular conflict. Initiative carried out by the women's movement at the local advocacy, means global and local promoting and conceptualizing the national plan